there lived a wicked woman named Mrs. Oge. She had a 22-year-old daughter named Ada and a stepdaughter named Amora, who was also 22 years old. Oge hated her stepdaughter Amora because Amora was prettier, hardworking, and was always praised by the villagers. She always wished that her daughter, Ada, had all these attributes. She made sure Amora did all the house chores, while her daughter Ada stayed back at home doing nothing. Whenever Ada and Amora have any little disagreement, Ada will run to her mother and tell her lies about Amora. That day Mrs. Oge will punish Amora and starve her from eating food throughout the day. One day Amora went to the stream to fetch water, when a handsome man saw her on her way to the stream. His name was Jayok. Jayok was a young man, born into a rich family. All the girls in the village admired him, but he got his eyes only on Amora. When Amora finished fetching her water, she was on her way, about to leave the stream when Jayok stopped her. He introduced himself to her and helped her carry her water pot on his head. They headed home while chatting. When Amora reached home, her stepmother, Mrs. Oge, queried her for returning from the stream late and resorted to beating her. The next day Amora went to the stream. On her way she met Jayok. Jayok tried talking to her, but she tried avoiding him. Jayok tried to ask her what the problem was. Then she finally opened up. He begged her and they became close again. This time around, she sat down with Jayok at a big tree near the stream and her stepsister Ada spied on her from the back of the tree. Ada ran back home to inform her mother, Mrs. Oge. She was jealous because she was one of Jayok's admirers. When Amora went home that day, her stepmother beat her to pulp and warned her to stop seeing Jayok. For 4 days Amora didn't step out of their hut. Jayok became worried because he stood at their usual spot, at the big tree near the river, to wait for Amora. When she didn't come out that day to fetch water, he became sad and was returning home. When Ada met him, she started showering praises at him and told him how she has been his admirer and loved him for a long time. But Jayok turned a deaf ear and decided to ignore her, like he ignores other girls. She disclosed to her mother that Jayok was the man Amora was spending time with at the stream, and her mother promised her to tame Amora and divert Jayok's attention to her. Ada was happy because she hoped that her mother would grant her Jayok. After a week Amora was finally allowed to leave the house. This time around, she was sent to go and carry firewood and was accompanied by Ada. On their way back from carrying firewood, Jayok stormed out of the bush and asked Amora that he wanted to help her carry the firewood on her head, but Amora bluntly refused as she was afraid of being reported again. All this while Ada was maliciously looking at the both of them with envy, as she had always liked Jayok and wanted him for herself. They both returned home and Ada fought Amora because of Jayok. She told Amora to stay away from Jayok as Jayok was hers alone. One evening the village maidens were having a maiden dance competition and Ada and Amora went out that night at full moon. When they got to the village square that night, they saw other village maidens dancing round a fire and Jayok was standing in the crowd. Amora and Ada joined the maidens to dance, when Jayok walked through the crowd and grabbed Amora to a dark corner. Ada followed them and was spying behind a tree and watching them. She watched them furiously. He poured out his heart to Amora. He told her how he had missed seeing her. They both hugged each other and Amora explained to him her situation and he promised to come and marry her. They both hugged and bid each other their goodbyes. Amora went back to the crowd and discovered that Ada was no longer at the dancing festival. Amora ran back home and she was asked to kneel down. Then Mrs. Oge asked her to stop seeing Jayok, and Mrs. Oge told her that Ada was already in love with Jayok. The next day, Jayok came to Amora's house with his kinsman bearing palm wine in a jar. He came to ask for Amora's hand in marriage, and Mrs. Oge agreed. That day Mrs. Oge called Amora and threatened her that she wasn't going to let her marry Jayok. That Ada will marry Jayok instead. The marriage day came, and according to their tradition, the bride is to be covered with wrapper like a veil, not revealing her face, and the groom carry his bride home before opening her veil. Jayok was very happy to see his bride, not knowing that it was all a deceit.